The Chronologue, Episode 10, A Conversation with Truman Burbank. The converted loft sits above a shuttered bookstore in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Late afternoon light filters through industrial windows, casting long shadows across exposed brick walls. Rain begins to tap against the glass. The first drops of what weather reports promised would be a steady evening shower. Two mismatched armchairs face each other across a small wooden table, where two steaming mugs rest beside a digital recorder no larger than a playing card. The air carries the faint scent of coffee and old paper from the floors below.
Testing, testing. Okay, we're recording. This is Jude Meridian, and welcome back to the Chronologue. Today I'm sitting with someone who needs no introduction, though he might prefer one anyway. Exactly 1 year ago, you walked through that door. The exit of the dome that had been your entire world for 30 years. How does it feel to be marking that anniversary?
You know, I woke up this morning and didn't even realize what day it was until I saw the date on my phone. That's progress, I think. Last month I was counting days obsessively. Day 334, day 335. Like I was still trapped in some kind of routine, you know?
But not today?
Not today. I made scrambled eggs this morning. Burned them, actually. And I just ate them anyway. Because they were real eggs. Burned by my own incompetence in a kitchen I chose. That probably sounds insane to most people.
It doesn't sound insane at all. Tell me about that kitchen.
It's tiny. Probably 8 feet by 8 feet in this studio apartment in the village. The landlord lied about the square footage. The refrigerator makes this humming noise that would have driven the sound engineers crazy. And the previous tenant left these yellow curtains that I should really replace, but I don't know. I keep them because no one told me to keep them. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. What does a typical day look like for you now?
Well, I work at an insurance office in Midtown. Process claims, mostly water damage. Ironically enough, the job is mind-numbing in the best possible way. My co-workers, they're just regular people dealing with regular problems. Janet brings in homemade cookies on Fridays, and Bill complains about his commute from Jersey, and nobody's performing anything. They know who I am, obviously, but after the first week, they mostly forgot to care.
Outside, the rain intensifies, drumming a steady rhythm against the windows. Truman's fingers trace the rim of his coffee mug as he speaks.
Do you miss any of it? The attention, I mean.
God, no. You can't imagine what it's like to discover that every person you've ever loved was reading from a script. Every kiss, every laugh, every moment of comfort during a nightmare, all choreographed. Even my grief was entertainment. When my dad died in that boating accident when I was 7, that wasn't teaching me about loss or helping me grow. That was ratings.
You put died in air quotes. You've met him since, haven't you, your real father?
Yeah, 3 months ago. That was... God, Jude, how do you even begin to process something like that? Here's this man, this stranger who shares my nose and my terrible posture, and he's crying in a Starbucks in Queens telling me how sorry he is. Sorry? For what? For letting them take me? For not fighting harder? For watching the show?
He watched.
Every episode. For 30 years. He said it was the only way he could see his son grow up. I didn't know whether to hug him or walk away. I didn't either. We just sat there for 2 hours talking about basketball like we were old friends catching up instead of whatever we are.
How is he now? Your relationship?
We text sometimes. He sends me articles about things he thinks I might like. Recipes, weird news stories. He's trying so hard to be a dad to a 30-year-old man he doesn't know. It's heartbreaking and sweet and awkward as hell. We're having dinner next week. 3rd time. I'm not sure what we're supposed to become to each other, but we're trying.
And your mother? Meryl?
You mean Angela? The actress who played my mother? I haven't spoken to her since the week after I got out. She kept trying to explain how she really did love me like a son. how the emotions were real, even if the circumstances weren't. But you can't separate the performance from the performer when the performance was raising a child. She changed my diapers for ratings, Jude. She kissed my scraped knees for sweeps week.
That must be incredibly painful to process.
The therapist I see, Dr. Hernandez, lovely woman, completely unimpressed by my situation. She says I'm grieving the death of people who never actually existed. My mother, my father, my wife, my best friend. They were all fictional characters. But the love I felt for them, that was real. So I'm mourning ghosts while learning to live with their actors.
Speaking of love, I have to ask about Sylvia, or Lauren as she's really called. She was the one who tried to tell you the truth all those years ago, wasn't she?
Lauren. God, just hearing her name. She was the only real thing in 30 years of fiction. Do you remember how we met? I was in the college library. This was all part of the show, of course, my higher education storyline. I was researching something, probably some meaningless paper they'd scripted for me, and there she was at the next table over. Just reading. Not performing, not hitting her marks. Actually reading.
What was it about her that felt different?
Her stillness, I think. Everyone else in my world had this constant energy, this awareness of being watched. But Lauren was just present. When our eyes met, she looked genuinely surprised to see me, not like she'd been waiting for her cue. We started talking about the book she was reading, something about marine biology, I remember. And for the first time in my life, a conversation felt unscripted.
When did you realize something was wrong?
When she suggested we get some air. We walked to the beach, and that's when everything changed. She kept looking around, nervous, checking over her shoulder. Then she grabbed my hand and said, "They're watching us. They're always watching." I thought she was being paranoid or maybe having some kind of breakdown.
But she was the only one telling you the truth.
The only one. She tried to explain, right there on that beach, that everything was fake, that I was living in a television show. And what did I do? I thought she was crazy. When those men came, who I now know were security, to take her away, she was screaming about how she loved me. The real me. Not the character. The man claiming to be her father kept apologizing, saying they were moving to Fiji, that she was sick. But her eyes... God, her eyes were so desperate, so clear.
That mention of Fiji became important to you later, didn't it?
For years. I couldn't get it out of my head. Not because I thought I'd find her there. I knew that was just what they said to explain her disappearance. But Fiji became this symbol for me. This place that existed beyond the dome. Beyond the show. When I finally escaped, I had to go there. Not to find Lauren, but to prove to myself that there was a world outside Seahaven.
Did you find what you were looking for in Fiji?
I found something better than what I was looking for. I found myself sitting on a beach, completely alone, with no cameras, no script, no purpose except to exist in that moment. The sunset there was the first truly private experience I'd had in 30 years. No one was watching. No one was recording. It was just for me.
But you did eventually find Lauren, didn't you?
I did, but not where I expected. When I got back to the States, I hired a private investigator. I know that sounds dramatic, but I needed to know what happened to the only person who'd tried to save me. Turned out she'd been living quietly in Oregon for 20 years, working as a marine biologist at a research station. The same field she'd been reading about in that library.
What was that reunion like?
Awkward at first. Incredibly awkward. I showed up at her lab unannounced. Probably not my best decision, and she just stared at me for the longest time. Then she started crying. Not dramatic television crying, but these quiet tears. Like she couldn't believe I was real. Couldn't believe I'd actually made it out.
How long had it been since that day on the beach?
20 years. 20 years since she tried to warn me. Since they dragged her away from me. She'd spent 2 decades wondering if her sacrifice had meant anything, if I'd ever understood what she was trying to tell me. Seeing me standing there in her lab, it was closure for both of us.
What did you two talk about during that visit?
Everything. Nothing. She told me about her life after they removed her from the show, how she'd been threatened, discredited, how they'd made sure no one would believe her if she tried to expose what was happening. She tried anyway, for years. But who was going to believe a delusional college student over a multi-billion-dollar entertainment empire?
Was there still? Did the romantic feelings survive all of that?
That's the complicated part. There was definitely something there. This deep connection, this recognition. But 20 years is a long time. We were both different people. She'd built a life around her work, around making peace with what had happened. I was still figuring out how to exist as a person rather than a character.
So what happened between you two?
We spent a week together. She showed me her research, these underwater gardens she was working to restore. There's something poetic about that, don't you think? She was healing things that had been damaged, bringing life back to places that seemed dead. We talked for hours about everything. Science, books, what it felt like to live an authentic life.
But you didn't stay.
We both realized that as much as we cared about each other, I needed to figure out who I was outside of the show before I could be with anyone. Even someone as understanding as Lauren. She'd spent 20 years dealing with the trauma of watching me trapped and being powerless to help. I'd spent 30 years in captivity. Neither of us was ready for the relationship we'd both wondered about for so long.
Do you still talk?
We do. Email mostly. Sometimes video calls. She sends me pictures of her research. These incredible coral formations that most people will never see. There's something beautiful about work that important being done quietly, without an audience. She understands that not everything needs to be performed to be valuable.
Is there hope for more between you two?
Maybe. We're both different people now than we were 20 years ago, or even 1 year ago. But there's still something there. A foundation of truth that nothing else in my life has. She sees me. Really sees me. In a way that no one else can. Because she was there at the beginning of my awakening. But I'm also learning that loving someone doesn't mean you have to build your entire life around them.
What do you mean?
For 20 years, the idea of finding Lauren wasn't just about reconnecting with someone. It was about proving that real love was possible. That someone had seen the real me even in that artificial world. But that's not fair to her. And it's not healthy. For me. She deserves to be loved for who she actually is, not as a symbol of authenticity. And I need to learn to be happy on my own before I can be happy with someone else.
The coffee grows cold as they talk. Truman absently rolls up his sleeves, revealing a small tattoo on his forearm, coordinates of some distant place.
I have to ask, what are those coordinates?
Fiji. 16 degrees, 1,785 seconds south. 179 degrees, 4,667 seconds west. Specifically, the beach where I watched my first private sunset. I got it done 2 weeks after I got back to New York. Hurt like hell, but I wanted something permanent that they couldn't edit or script or take away from me. A reminder that I did find what I was looking for, even if it wasn't exactly what I expected.
Speaking of finding things, how do you handle being in public now? People still recognize you.
Less than you'd think, actually. There's something about being on TV every day for 30 years that makes people think they know exactly what you look like. But I was always lit perfectly. Always clean-shaven. Always wearing clothes that had been selected by professionals. In real life and with a beard and coffee stains on my shirt. Buying toilet paper at CVS. Most people just see another guy having an ordinary day.
But some do recognize you.
Some do. Usually it's kind. People saying they're glad I'm doing well, that they're sorry about what happened. But sometimes people want to treat me like I'm still performing. They'll ask me to say catchphrases, or they'll try to take selfies, like I'm a character at Disney World. There's this disconnect where they can't see me as a real person who went through something traumatic. I'm still Truman Burbank, you know?
How do you handle those moments?
I'm learning to set boundaries. Dr. Hernandez taught me that it's okay to say no, to walk away, to protect my peace. For 30 years, I never disappointed anyone because disappointing people would have hurt ratings. Now, I'm disappointing people left and right, and it's incredibly liberating.
What about other relationships? Dating?
That's complicated. How do you explain to someone on a first date that your last relationship was with an actress who was paid to love you, and before that, you had one meaningful conversation with someone 20 years ago? I've been on a few dates. Coffee mostly, nothing serious. There's this woman, Sarah, from the office. She's sweet, completely normal, has no interest in my past beyond basic sympathy.
How does that feel?
Terrifying and amazing. Every time she laughs at something I say, I wonder if it's genuine. Every time she touches my hand, I have to remind myself that she's not being directed to do it. But she has this way of complaining about truly mundane things. Traffic, her landlord, the fact that they changed the formula for her favorite shampoo. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Real problems. Real frustrations. Real life.
Do you compare her to Lauren?
I try not to, but of course I do. They're completely different people. Lauren understood my situation in a way that Sarah never could. But Sarah represents something different. The possibility of a normal relationship built on normal foundations. Not shared trauma or dramatic rescue. Just two people who meet at work and discover they enjoy each other's company.
Looking ahead, what are you most hoping for?
The possibility of visiting Lauren again someday. Not to escape or chase a dream, but just to see her work. To sit on that beach in Oregon where she does her research. And to feel settled. Like I belong somewhere by choice. Not because I was placed there. Whether that's with Lauren or just with myself, I'm not sure yet. But for the first time in both our lives, we have time to figure things out properly.
The light outside has shifted from gray to deep purple. Street lamps begin to flicker on below, creating pools of yellow light on the wet pavement.
Any final thoughts for people who might be listening?
Just pay attention to your own life. Really look at it. Ask yourself if you're living it or just performing it. And if someone tries to tell you a difficult truth, someone who has nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking up, listen to them. They might be the only person who sees you clearly enough to love the real you.
The recorder clicks off. Outside, Brooklyn continues its evening rhythm, unaware and unconcerned with the conversation that has just taken place. In the growing darkness, two people sit in comfortable silence, listening to the rain and the distant sounds of a world that is exactly as messy and beautiful and real as it appears to be.